Hot on the heels of the first movie and trying to capitalize on its success, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust released in the year 2000. Now that's just 15 years after the original. This time, however, it was animated by an up-and-coming studio named Madhouse. Now you may have heard of them, as they had some moderate success with a few little-known anime titles, like Cardcaptor Sakura, Trigun, and Cowboy Bebop. They also had a few notable movies both before and after Bloodlust, so it's safe to say they were in their prime. And boy does it show. When compared to the 1985 movie, the decade and a half of progress in animation is apparent, and Bloodlust really loves to show it off. Like the previous movie, the dark atmosphere is set right away. This time, however, instead of the sense of danger coming from what you can't see, it's coming from the details of what you can see. The bent crosses, frozen water, and wilting flowers all convey the power of the creature that's coming. There is a shot of what appears to be a Gothic space station orbiting the Earth, while some exposition is displayed. And I think there's a bit of a translation error here. The lore of a half-vampire, half-human appears to come from the Balkans, who used the word Danpir. But in Vampire Hunter D, they're using the word Dunpeel. My guess is that they translated Danpir to Japanese, and then back, resulting in Dunpeel. It's really not important at all. I just thought it was kind of interesting. Dee meets up with a family that wants to hire him to rescue a girl named Charlotte from the vampire Meyer Link. He's told that a group of hunters called the Marcus Brothers have also already been hired, so he's going to have some competition for the reward. The Marcus Brothers roll around in a bus suited for either the apocalypse or a trip to Detroit. The group is quickly shown to be capable fighters, though. While being attacked by zombies, one of the brothers uses a crossbow to launch bolts like he's auditioning for the movie 300. The brother, who appears to have both a knife fetish and a David Bowie obsession, starts slashing. A juggalo with a giant mallet goes to town. And another David Bowie impersonator named Layla guards someone who's staying in the bus. I would question why David Bowie's so popular here, but I think we all know why. It goes by fast, but the zombie slashing in this fight is a lot of fun. It even ends with a zombie Wilhelm scream.
Gotcha.
The team hears someone approaching, and Discount Wolverine launches a bolt at what they assume to be is another enemy. And this scene had to have been made as trailer bait. Like, this whole sequence was animated just for the purpose of advertising. But I don't blame them, because damn, it looks cool. Dee encounters some Sandmanas in the desert, and this is where Left Hand makes his first appearance. Now, I'm not really sure which version of Left Hand I prefer. I'm not really sure which version of Left Hand I prefer. On the one hand, we can really only see his eyes and mouth, and that leaves a lot to our imaginations to fill the gaps. On the other left hand, we get to see a lot of details, and we get to see how grotesque his face really is. Both do a pretty good job of making him a somewhat dark and disturbing character. Layla catches up to Dee on a unicycle that seems a lot less far-fetched today than it did back in the year 2000. She arrives just as Dee finds Meyer Link's hideout, and her attack really screws up Dee's infiltration. In the fight, Meyer claims that Charlotte is with him of her own free will, which Dee unsurprisingly doubts. That is until Charlotte calls out Meyer's name just as he's about to be struck by Dee's sword. This surprises Dee, or at least as surprised as Dee can get, and he calls off his pursuit. He happens across an injured Layla whom he bandages up. She, of course, thanks him by acting like an ungrateful
You think
bitch.
you can just go ahead and tear off the clothes of whoever you come across? That's what you think, isn't it, Dun Peel?
The Marcus brothers' bus comes to a halt just as they catch up to Meyer Link. Suspecting a trap, they send in the Juggalo to strike first. Of course, it is a trap, and a monster that can leap through shadows kills the Fago-loving hunter. The remaining brothers spend a few seconds mourning the loss and say they can't move on without him. They then proceed to move on without him. Having overtaken the Marcus brothers, Dee enters the Barbaroi, a den filled with mutants and monsters. He requests that they stop protecting Meyer Link, to which they unsurprisingly refuse. Just outside, a frail-looking man is preparing to shoot up, and this shit gets him so high that he has an out-of-body experience. And one of the coolest powers in the movie. While the meth is wreaking havoc on his body and the Barbaroi, he makes the mistake of attacking Dee, who cuts his trip short. As the hunters leave, a mutant T-2000 crashes the bus and leaves them stranded to fight the Shadow Man. It's another brief but pretty good fight, really. After all the fighting, everybody needs to regroup. Meyer's reading something about the pathway to the stars, the Marcus brothers are trying to get their bus running, and Dee appears to be lost in the desert. The town he happens upon is clearly inspired by the Wild West, complete with racist sheriff who hates Dunpeers and everything. Now, it's been pretty clear so far that they aren't liked, to the point that Dunpeel is even used as a slur. But in this case, I think they were just a little too overt. It isn't blazing saddles over the top or anything, but I think I would have preferred it to be a little bit more subtle. When the sheriff tells Dee that he can't buy a horse, the stable master begins to tell a story about the time the town's children were kidnapped by vampires. The town hired a Dampier to rescue them, but after he did all the work, the townsfolk ran him out of town. The old stable master then pulls a gun on the sheriff and reveals that he was one of the kids, and Dee was the Dampier that had saved him. I think it's a pretty cool story that gets across that a lot of time has passed, while Dee and the prejudice that he faces remain unchanged. Dee catches up to Meyer's carriage and attempts to reason with Charlotte, who insists that Meyer isn't evil. Their conversation's cut short by Layla, who barges in and again screws things up for Dee, which forces him to fight with another mutant while Charlotte escapes. The fight, along with too much sun, leave Dee in pretty bad shape. After picking herself up from her latest ass-kicking, Layla comes across Dee and actually helps him. This leads to a little heart-to-heart, where Layla explains the death of her family and why she became a hunter in the first place. The conversation does do a pretty good job of explaining Layla's motivation, and it does make her a bit of a more sympathetic character than she was before. The remaining Marcus brothers ambush Meyer on a bridge and attempt to take Charlotte from him. This leads to Meyer going out into the sun after her. And this was made back when vampires were scary and mysterious, and they didn't go out in the sun because they didn't want to be turned into a pile of ash. Not because they were angsty teenagers and looked like they were covered in glitter. This scene really starts to make you feel like maybe Meyer isn't the bad guy. I mean, sure, it was talked about before, but it still could have just been talk. And he could have had other motivation. Enduring the pain of the sun shows that he was serious. On top of this, the way the Marcus brothers taunt him and laugh really turns a table on who the bad guys are here. One of the monsters protecting Meyer turns the tables, killing one of the brothers and seriously injuring the other. At this point, though, I'm kind of starting to root for the monsters. During their escape, Meyer tells Charlotte that they will soon leave to a city among the stars where they can be free to love each other. Left Hand begins berating Dee for chasing Meyer. He insists that Dee is chasing him not just for the job, but because he doesn't really want to see another Don Pierre born. Left Hand does take a break from questioning Dee's motivation to explain that the castle they're approaching is owned by Carmilla. Now, she was a vampire so heinous that she was killed by Dracula himself. And the castle is now occupied by her vengeful ghost. Meyer and Charlotte reach the castle where they're greeted by Carmilla. She offers them refuge and shows them a spaceship.
That's it. That is the ship. It will take you to the City of the Night, where you can live peacefully at last.
Oh, come on! Yep, a frickin' spaceship. Meyer wasn't talking about metaphors. He was talking about a literal damn city among the stars. Meyer goes out to fight Dee as Borgov and Layla enter the castle. Now, anybody that enters this castle seems to be shown an illusion, presumably to get their guard down. Meyer sees Charlotte willing to leave him to escape with Dee. Charlotte, a staircase leading up to Meyer. Discount Wolverine sees his dead brothers. Layla, a past version of herself. And Dee sees Carmilla, who claims that she loved his father. It seems like Dee is the only one that isn't buying it, though. And he attacks Carmilla, shattering the illusion. But not before Borgov was turned. Zombie Borgov attempts to take Layla hostage, but the attempt is ruined by a junkie on a suicide mission. Charlotte gets bitten by the illusion of Meyer, and her blood resurrects Carmilla. Dee, with the help of Meyer, attacks Carmilla, and she's quickly defeated. It happens so fast that there's really no tension in the fight, and it kind of seems anticlimactic, but the way it's shown actually kind of makes up for it. While Layla has shown to have gained some sympathy for Meyer, Dee has not. He still seems to be hell-bent on stopping the unholy union and returning Charlotte to her family. Meyer and Dee seem to be pretty evenly matched in this fight, and as it continues, Layla finds that Charlotte has died. Her outburst at all of the killing seems to finally resonate with Dee, who decides to spare Meyer, saying that Charlotte's ring will be enough to claim the reward. Dee and Layla escape as the castle crumbles, and from outside they watch the launch of Vampire SpaceX.
Fly, come on! You can make it. Come on! Fly away.
The movie ends with Dee watching a funeral from a distance. A child approaches him who it turns out is Layla's granddaughter. I think it's a nice touch that again shows the passage of time, as well as cementing Layla's character development. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust is a big upgrade in almost every way from the previous film. While the character designs are a style that died out in the 90s, they still suit the dark and gothic mood of this movie. The animation is beautiful and detailed in such a way that it makes you feel more connected to this world. The things that are supposed to be beautiful are beautiful. The things that are supposed to be grotesque are grotesque. And when it's supposed to look epic, boy does it look epic. The story is better too. The characters are more fleshed out, so you can get a better understanding of their motivation and sympathize with them. And of course, forbidden love stories are always a classic. Now, the story isn't without flaws. The racist sheriff scene was almost overdone, to the point of making him less intimidating. Having everyone pull out their guns like they did made them seem more frightened than intimidating to me. yes, they're scared of vampires, and that is why they hate them. The problem is these guys pose no threat to Dee, and everybody there would have known it. I would have rather had them stand by with their guns while the sheriff spent more time insulting and berating Dee. In my opinion, the posturing and trying to intimidate with words would have been a lot more tense than a Mexican standoff. It also could have reinforced the idea that the biggest problems Dee faces in this world aren't physical. This is a minor gripe, though, and maybe my idea would have been a little bit worse. But not worse than frickin' Castle Rocket! Okay, yeah, this is my biggest complaint about the movie. It's one of those things that is only kind of dumb when you see it, but the more you think about it, the dumber it is. A piece of the castle, or what looks like a piece of the castle, flew off into space. All that talk about living in the stars was literal, and I wish it wasn't. They could have gone the full Romeo and Juliet, and I think it would have been better. They could have made the living among the stars a metaphor for a suicide pact, and that would have made Charlotte and Myers' motivation not one of survival, but instead a fight for just a few moments of peace together before leaving a world they could never truly be together in. No, we get Rocket Castle. At least make it a Stargate or something. Despite my complaints, the story is still good. And in my opinion, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, it is a classic. If you haven't seen it yet, or you haven't watched it in a long time, give it a shot. You might like it. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider giving that thumbs up a little tippity tap. Seeing that you did would really make my day. Also, I plan on making more videos about vintage and forgotten anime, as well as some related subjects like my video about anime and tragic events. So if that kind of stuff interests you, consider subscribing too. Later! You know, Left Hand is a pretty cool character. I don't know why Dee doesn't use him more. That whole sucking things in power seems to be pretty useful.